Pushkin. Pushkin. Heads up, this episode contains a reference to suicide and detailed descriptions of combat. Hey, it's Jake here. I hope you enjoyed The Truth About Sarah. This season, there were so many interviews Jess and I did that we just couldn't fit in, but that really stayed with us, kind of looping in our heads. Some of them are pretty haunting, and we wanted to share a few of these with you. This first one involves that song that you heard about in the last episode of the series, the country ballad, the one that Sarah went to Nashville to help create. In this episode, we're going to show you how that song came to be and introduce you to one person in particular who helps veterans make these songs. His name is Seth Cole, and once upon a time, he was friends with Sarah Cavanaugh. Back in 2019, Sarah joined a songwriting program. It was run by Creative Vets, a nonprofit out of Nashville that helps veterans heal from trauma through music and art. You might remember the song that Sarah helped to create through that program. It was in our last episode.
And I smell the soul, I feel the warmth of blood, and I'll never forget how heavy the silence was. Let's go back before I lost you.
Sarah actually helped write 2 songs in Nashville. The second is a kind of soul-searching love ballad called Still See Me. The lyrics, well, they're all about this woman who's lost her way in life. Here, have a listen. I'm not who I used to be, and I can't find the me I've known. Yeah, it's almost like she was giving us a peek behind the curtain, hinting at the double life that she was leading and all the confusion and heartache that it caused.
We all listened to her song and thought, oh, this is great, wonderful, you got some more healing. And then just to come find out, it was all a lie. It was all just smoke and mirrors.
That's Seth Cole. He's the guy that I was telling you about. He works at Creative Vets. He's their veteran outreach coordinator. And Seth, he actually met Sarah back when she was living her double life as a wounded veteran. While Seth was happy for Sarah that she'd found some catharsis, he told me that when he heard her song, Still See Me, something about it just didn't seem right.
I couldn't put my finger on it, but I just didn't believe the song. I did not believe the song. That was the first thing that I had thought, but I was just like, oh, well, maybe, there were a few things in there that didn't make sense to me, because a lot of the songs you can listen to and you can like, oh yeah, I could see that happening. But hers, it just had something to it. It just wasn't connecting.
When I interviewed Seth back in November, we talked for hours. I heard his whole story. And like so much of what you've heard this season, that story, it will once again change the way that you think about Sarah Cavanaugh. Welcome back to Deep Cover Season 6, The Truth About Sarah. This is Seth's story. Let me start by telling you how Seth found his way to Creative Vets. He first joined as a participant, a veteran looking for something, anything, that might help him find some solace. Then he volunteered, and eventually he joined the staff. Now, Seth's the guy you talk to when you reach out to creative vets. Veterans who call are sometimes shy and skeptical, but Seth, he's got a hell of an opening spiel.
I just say, hey, I'll start out. My name's Seth Cole. I'm a veteran of the Iraq War, and I made it about 6 months into my deployment before I was hit with a Mark 19 grenade, and that completely ended my career. I ended up going back to Walter Reed, and I woke up in Ward 57 where they were talking about cutting my right arm off.
You're just dropping all this on them.
I'm just dropping all of it on them because I want them to do the same thing with me. I want them to reciprocate exactly what I just did. If they went through something so totally dark that it put them in that space of mind that, I can't go further, I need them to tell me that. And so I tell my whole story.
Seth's story, it has a rocky start. He grew up in Kansas in a small town called Stafford.
I went all the way through life, pretty much 5 years old, didn't know a dad, didn't know anything about life. My mom said my dad ran off. She brought another guy into my life at 5 that was my stepdad. When I was 14, my mom and my stepdad got divorced, and she decided that she wanted to marry a new guy, and that guy didn't want any kids. So at 14, I was kicked out of the house.
You were 14 at the time?
Yeah, I was 14. I've been living on my own since I was 14 years old.
And were you going to school?
I did up until about junior year, and then in junior year I just couldn't keep up with it anymore. It was either work or go to school, and so I was tired of finding myself not being able to have water, not being able to have electricity, or not being able to have gas, or so I had to figure something out, and I had to go get a better job.
So Seth gets a job painting grain elevators. Those big metal towers pointed at the top. You see them scattered throughout the Midwest. Anyway, Seth painted those, and he picked up other jobs wherever he could. He says he worked long hours, not much pay. He was stuck, and he knew he needed a way out, a way forward.
I was just like, okay, what am I going to do with life, and how am I going to get out of this situation? So I went to the military, and the National Guard was like, yeah, we can get you in there. We'll ship you out in about May.
And that was that. Seth was now a member of the U.S. military. After some training, he was sent overseas in 2007.
So I got deployed to Mahmadiyah, Iraq. I saw a lot of things that I probably didn't want to, that very first week. And then after that, it was just like downhill, everything from dead camels to dead humans.
Seth says that from the start, it was chaos. Just one thing after another. And it didn't let up.
Every day from that point on was either a mortar attack or a rocket attack or, some sort of crazy thing that happened. We had mass casualty come in, and everybody was being run out by gurneys. And I'm probably 100 yards away looking at this. We were in one of the worst areas in Iraq, and it showed.
One day, Seth was given an assignment to set up a radar system in between two villages. Seth was with his buddy, another soldier. Someone took a shot at them from behind a tree line. The bullet hit the sandbag in front of him. His buddy, who was holding this Mark 19 grenade launcher, jerked it down into his lap. And it was an old piece of gear, no safety. The trigger depressed. It fired. The round hit a wall, ricocheted, and exploded. 3 feet from Seth's face.
As I just thought about it for a second, I had dropped a piece of brain out of my head, which I thought was a clot. I picked it up just to make sure, and it was a piece of brain, and I was like, oh my God, this is not good. At that point, I was just like, oh crap, I'm dead. And so I passed out, and I was in and out of consciousness. They did like the triage in Baghdad. They did a surgery in Balad, and then I woke up in ICU in Walter Reed.
Seth suffered a traumatic brain injury. He spent 3.5 months recovering at Walter Reed, then another 1.5 years at a hospital in Fort Riley, Kansas. Once he was stable, he moved to Washington State and tried to start over. He enrolled in college in a clinical psychology program. But then the seizures started, bad ones. He had to drop out. He couldn't drive. He couldn't work. He told me he felt completely cut off, alone. And things got dark. So dark, he thought about ending his life. Then, in 2016, almost a decade after his time in Iraq, he got a lifeline.
The Wounded Warrior Project, they reached out to me and they said, hey, we want to put you into this program called the Independence Program. And it's a lifelong deal where we follow you throughout life and we, help you with services, help you get a CSS, which is Community Support Specialist, more or less just a caregiver to help you clean your house, take you to appointments, because at one point with all those seizures, I couldn't drive.
All of a sudden, Seth had the support that he desperately needed. He got all kinds of help from Wounded Warrior, including retreats where he could connect with other veterans.
One of the things that they had, though, for this thing was a financial summit to kind of teach you how to balance the budget, keep savings, play with the stock market if that's what you want to do. And that's where Sarah, Russell, Travis, and I all met.
Sarah, as in Sarah Cavanaugh. At the time, Sarah was also enrolled in the Wounded Warrior Independence Program. She even had someone helping her at home with daily tasks. At that retreat, Seth formed deep connections with the people that he met. There was Russ, the salt of the earth former Green Beret. There was Travis from Detroit, who was a double amputee. And then, of course, there was Sarah. Seth told us that he heard stories from Sarah about her service, stories you may recognize by now.
She said she went to Afghanistan. She ended up having a IED go off pretty much right beside her, and it shattered her hips.
Seth remembers the first time that he saw Sarah, standing in the hotel lobby, mingling with the other vets.
She was outgoing. That was the biggest thing. Like, she was talking to everybody and she was outgoing. She definitely struck an interest because I wanted that bug that she had. If she was able to go through all the crap that she said she was and be able to be that bubbly, I wanted that bug because I wanted to be able to get back to being a social butterfly. And so I just kind of gravitated towards that. And I guess that, Travis and Russ both saw the same thing. It organically kicked off. We hung out with each other the whole time.
This is something that we've seen before. Sarah shows up at these events, surrounded by real vets, many of them struggling, and somehow she just fits right in. She finds community. She blends. She bonds. She knows how to connect in these small group settings where people can often be guarded, but also quietly yearning for connection. And she doesn't overplay it. A sore hip here, a bad back there. Nothing wild, at least not at first. Nothing that sets off alarms. Just enough to pass as one of them.
Every once in a while, she'd be like, oh, my hips are tired. And so Russ would pick her up and give her a piggyback ride. She was blaming that on, oh, my hips are killing me and my back's hurting. I've got so many metal rods in my body. And so, it was just like the normal stuff that if somebody been through an IED or somebody been through a traumatic incident, that, really hurt their body, that was the kind of stuff that she was portraying. It was just like, okay, yeah, you're pretty messed up just like the rest of us. We got Travis, who's a double amputee, wheeling beside us.
After the retreat, this new group of friends continued to swap advice, share what they learned about how to navigate the system and make the most of the resources available to veterans. And get this, it was actually Sarah who first told them about Creative Vets, the program that helps veterans make songs about their life. And there was another program that Creative Vets ran also, where veterans could create artwork, like paintings. Sarah, she passed this info along. Seth eventually signed up, kind of half convinced, and he got accepted into one of Creative Vets' art programs. At the time, he didn't know what impact it would have. He just knew he was in a dark place. Really dark.
So before that, I had been planning on just going and saying goodbye to Russ and, even Sarah at that time, and just kind of coming back and eating a bullet. I had been thinking about it for a very long time. I had a spot picked out, so that was what it was going to be.
But fortunately, something got in between him and that bullet, that date he'd made on the calendar to attend the Creative Vets Retreat. It was an art program held on the campus of USC in Los Angeles. He spent 2 weeks there. Russ and Sarah went with him. The three of them hung out and explored the city, Venice Beach, Malibu, the Santa Monica Pier. In class, Seth did his artwork, and he made a piece called Dinner Before Disaster. It was his way of telling the story of what had happened to him in Iraq. The title comes from that moment just before the grenade exploded, when he'd been eating a meal. He welded a metal brain, and he set it next to a ceramic bowl. Then he cut a chunk out of that brain to show the part that was lost, and he scattered sand all around it. For Seth, making this was so cathartic, and it brought him a realization about the power of creating art.
I went out there, and in the time that I was out there doing all that stuff, a light bulb hit, and I was like, man, I could share this with everybody, and this could actually help them to get through some of these traumas. And so when I got done with the program, instead of going and eating that bullet, I went back and threw myself into the VA and the volunteer side. And so, that was my life-changing moment. It put a new sense of purpose into me.
We'll be right back. After his time in Los Angeles at the art retreat, Seth did okay for a while. Then COVID hit, and Seth, like so many of us, struggled with the shutdowns and the isolation. Then he got a call from the executive director of Creative Vets, asking him if he wanted to participate in a songwriting program over Zoom.
Everybody was, sitting in their house, and I was getting back to that spot again, but I was like, okay, there's something that's going to happen. And Richard called and he was like, hey, we're going to do a virtual songwrite. Since we can't bring everybody out to Nashville, would you be up for that? I said, yeah, why not?
Seth was not a musician, but because the whole art retreat in Los Angeles had gone so well, he figured, let me give this a try. Seth was assigned a mentor and a songwriter who listened carefully to his story.
They asked me, what do you have on your mind? And I was like, look, I'm interested in being able to take pretty much my whole life, and put it into here. And then that way that I can just put all the trauma behind me. And they were like, okay, yeah, let's do that. And so I started pretty much from the beginning where I did with you. And I went all the way through everything. This took like 6 hours or more just to be able to get everything done and on that piece of paper. And by the time we were all said and done, they had the melody, the song, the lyrics, all that stuff put together. And we took it over to the studio the next day and put it down on track.
For years, Seth carried the weight of his story without a place to set it down. But here, through this songwriting program, he found the space and the courage to lay it all out. Trauma, memory, truth, all transformed into melody. What had once felt unspeakable was now a song.
Just such an amazing experience coming out of there, even being virtual. When I got off the computer, I was so happy and elated and just ready to go.
And the song, it was something that he could share.
You've been able to put this out and get things, on paper that, you don't ever have to talk about again. Now you can pass this song over to somebody and that'll explain your story for you.
What was it like the first time you heard this song, like as an actual song with music and someone singing it?
Oh my gosh. It was like goosebumps everywhere. Like that was my story coming to life, and it actually made an impact on not only me, but the people around me. Because every time that I shared that song, every time that I sang that song, every time that I played it, it was just someone came up with something new to say about it.
Well, Do you sing? Can you sing a line for me? Or are you not a singer?
Oh, I do sing.
Give us a line then.
All right. You don't get to choose your flesh and blood, how you were raised or where you're from. Sometimes the cards you're dealt ain't fair, so you fold your hands to the man upstairs when the weight he's putting on you is just too much. You can choose to let it break you down, fight to keep your life around, find a way inside to rise above. Man. Yeah, that song gets me every time anyway. So, sorry for the non-warm-up singing.
No, you're good.
Debuted at the Opry. I've had a couple of times. We've been on the field, the Titans game. We've been, gosh, where else?
It played on the field at the Titans game?
Ladies and gentlemen, here to perform Seth's song, Rise Above, please put your hands together for Craig Campbell. Some people have a picture-perfect childhood with a house up on the hill.
Seth told me about this moment, standing in the Titans stadium before tens of thousands of fans. And these musicians are performing his song, belting out the words to his story, like an anthem of hardship and resilience. People are cheering, and then, in a scene that could probably only happen in America, they offer Seth one final tribute.
Seth, thank you so much. You've given so much to your country. Now, as a single father of 5, you're giving so much to these kids. And how about a 2024 Nissan Pathfinder Platinum Edition so you can get these kids to school? We love you, brother. One more time for Seth Cole, ladies and gentlemen.
My kids and I were all standing out there, and it was just one of the most emotional moments of my life. It was really one of those experiences I can't put into words. It was just all emotion.
Even though Seth has found some healing and community at Creative Vets, it still hasn't been an easy path for him. His friend Travis, the one from Detroit who was a double amputee, he passed away in 2021. His memory stays with Seth, and it still kind of tears him up that he couldn't have done more to help this friend and fellow veteran.
I had just talked to him the month before, and he was doing good. He was learning language. He was, he had a plan for life, and, something happened that week that, just completely threw him back into that spiral. And so he went back to go find pain relief and found death instead.
Seth told us that Travis never applied to a program with Creative Vets, but he really wishes that he had. Whether or not it would have helped, it's impossible to say. But Seth, he can't help but wonder what it might have done for Travis.
He was trying to find those tools every time that we talked. It was, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and he was trying to find the one thing that's going to help him to be able to get out of that hole. And he didn't find it. So, knowing that really leaves a burden on my heart.
For him, this lost opportunity underscores what Sarah stole, a spot that somebody else could have taken.
We're a very small organization, so being able to do large groups is not something that we're tailored for. We're for that small, intimate, session, and we can only help so many veterans a year. And to have one that comes through the program multiple times that happens to not be a veteran, really takes away from those that could have been able to get in here and do something with their life and turn it around.
For Seth, these Creative Vet retreats, they're not just a perk, not just a nod to the hardship veterans have endured. They're a chance to make sense of that hardship, to embrace it, to find meaning in it. To take something jagged and raw, and through the alchemy of music, shape it into something that speaks, not just to others, but also to oneself. That's what the process of collaborating on his song did for Seth. That's what he's seen it do for others. And by staying on at Creative Vets, he's hoping that he can carry that gift to people like Travis, before the silence swallows them whole. When Seth came home from Iraq, he was trying to make sense of what he'd been through. The help that was offered came in the form of questions, structured, clinical, well-intentioned. But for Seth, this didn't help him find peace. Not really.
Most of us have to go through the VA, and the VA wants to sit there and ask us questions, and then we give them the answer, and then they're like, how do you feel about that? It's like, I don't even know how I feel about, life in general. So asking me how I feel about this, I really can't give you an answer on that.
But at Creative Vets, Seth found a place to talk. And now, anytime he meets someone new, he doesn't have to answer questions or even say a word. He'll just play them his song.
You don't get to choose your flesh and blood, how you were raised or where you're from. Sometimes the cards you dealt ain't fair, so you fold your hand to the man upstairs when the weight he's putting on you's just too much. You can choose to let it break you down, or fight to turn your life around. Find the strength inside to rise above.
Next time on Deep Cover, we dive into one of our biggest unresolved questions from the series. Did Sarah Cavanaugh have an accomplice?
So there had to be other people involved. Right. There absolutely had to be, because I clearly remember at least 2 times when Ivy was on the phone. There had to be another person.
This episode was produced by Amy Gaines McQuaid, Tali Emlin, and Sonia Gerwit. It was edited by Karen Chakirji. Our executive producer is Jacob Smith. Original music from Luis Guerra. Mastering by Sarah Bruguer. Special thanks to Jess McHugh, Jake Flanagan, Sarah Nix, and Greta Cohn. Additional thanks to Creative Vets. I'm Jake Halpern.